I can't remember who met who first, or who fell in love with who first. All I can remember is the seven of us always together.
Well, it's not just infatuation, Kevin. She's not just a girl. She's the only evidence of God that I can find on this entire planet.
Where did you meet Wendy again?
Prison.
Hi, Flick. How you doing? Me? Oh, you know, it ain't easy being me.
You know all those nights we stayed up talking? How come you never made a pass at me?
I'm gonna get you a red, lacy baby doll Leica.
Alec, I'm very happy in your old pajamas.
Well, I'm happy when you're out of my old pajamas.
Alec is becoming a Republican and he wants to get married. Oh my God. Do you ever feel like you're not accomplishing anything at all?
I think I'm in touch with that emotion.
The heat this summer is at St. Elmo's Fire.
You're not gonna believe how out of hand it's gonna be.
Rated R.
In the mid-1980s, there were few dramas aimed at young adults, and movie studios had not yet figured out how to appeal to what would be known as Generation X, who were then in their teens and early 20s. At the same time, a new group of young actors were on the verge of stardom. This 80s flick featured Rob Lowe as a deadbeat dad, Andrew McCarthy as a struggling journalist, Mare Winningham as a kind-hearted wealthy girl, Emilio Estevez as a lovesick waiter obsessed with a hospital intern, Judd Nelson as a young Republican, Ali Sheedy as his pearl-wearing girlfriend, and Demi Moore as the resident drama queen. The film captured the spirit of the Reagan era and focused on a group of college friends who had just graduated from Georgetown University. It resonated with its youthful audience and remains a cultural touchstone for many people now in their middle age. So get ready to climb the highest mountain and cross the widest sea as JB Huffman and I discuss St. Elmo's Fire from 1985 on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Well, welcome in, 80s Flick lovers. Welcome to another exhilarating episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Get ready to embark on a nostalgic journey through the most iconic films of the decade that brought us unforgettable adventures, epic music, and classic one-liners. We're thrilled to have you join us, and if you're as excited as we are, be sure to leave us a stellar 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button. We want to hear from you as well, so dive into the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Your favorite flicks and questions fuel our passion for all things rad from the 1980s. And if you're feeling generous and want to show your support, check us out at buymeacoffee.com. Every little bit counts and goes a long way in keeping the podcast alive. Plus, make sure to explore 80sflickflashback.com and our TeePublic store for some totally awesome merch and original designs. Now, let's get this party started. Let me introduce my co-host, back in the co-host chair after a little hiatus, but glad to have him back with us. It's JB Huffman from Manly Movies Podcast. How you doing, JB?
I am doing great, man. Christmas is over, and it takes forever in my family because I've got family in other states. So, yeah, good times.
Yes. And let's be the first to say Happy New Year. This is our first episode of 2025, which is kind of cool because St. Elmo's Fire came out in 1985. So we're talking about a movie that's going to turn 40 years old this year, which doesn't make us feel old at all, right?
Oh, because I'm turning 40 as well. So,
yeah, I crossed the 50 mark just a couple of months ago. So,
nice.
Yeah, so fun times to be had by all. But anyway, you know how we do. Let's get it started. When did you see St. Elmo's Fire for the first time?
Oh man, you know, it's funny. It's a funny story. Back in 2005, I think, when that song by Bowling for Soup came out, 1985.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
See, I was born in 85, and I try to watch a lot of movies from '85, and some of my favorite ones are like Back to the Future and Breakfast Club. But they mentioned in that song Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, even St. Elmo's Fire, and I was like, when I first heard the song, I was like, what is St. Elmo's Fire? Because I couldn't think of it. And then finally, when I decided to watch it, I was like, oh, I watched this like several times when I was a kid. I couldn't think of I didn't realize that was the name of it. But I remember watching it a lot, like because it would come on TV, or my mom might have been watching it or something. But I remember watching it quite a bit. Maybe not like start to finish every time.
Right.
As a kid in the 80s and 90s. But my actual first time that I can remember it vividly watching, start to finish was probably 2010. My wife and I watched it together, and I watched it a couple times since then. So yeah, it's a good one, man. I'm a big fan of that era, the Brat Pack. Like I grew up watching that stuff. John Hughes and all those kids. So yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, this is not one that I saw as a kid. I think I might have seen bits and pieces. I might have watched the TV version when it came on. I was obsessed with the song, like, Man in Motion, St. Elmo's Fire. I mean, it was a huge hit. We'll talk about that when we get into trivia. And then, like, as a teenager, like 14, 15, maybe even 16, we lived on base in Texas. I've talked about this before. There we could check out like VHS movies, and we could also check out like albums, full like record albums. I remember finding like a David Foster album of all, like David Foster like did all these instrumental songs, and that was one of his biggest hits, was the theme from St. Elmo's Fire. So listening to that, I was like, man, I really haven't ever seen that movie. And so when we were moving from Maryland back to Georgia, my parents, I came down with my parents, and they were looking at houses, and I think I hung out with them for like the first hour, and I was like, I cannot look at another empty house. I'm like, 16, 17. I'm like, this is not how I want to spend 8 hours of my day. So they were like, hey, we'll take you back to the hotel and you can just hang out. And so at the hotel, I think they must have had Showtime, because I still think at that point, HBO only showed R-rated movies after 9:00. And whatever cable they had there, St. Elmo's Fire was coming on like 4:00 in the afternoon or something like that. So it was like, oh, well, I've never seen it. It's coming on. So I watch it. So I remember watching it for the first time there at the hotel, and really liking it. Like, maybe being older as a teenager, I could understand a little bit more, even though it was still kind of dated with some of the stuff in it. But I resonated with some of the characters, and, recognized pretty much everybody that was in it, because I'd seen them in other things since then. So that was my first time watching it from beginning to end. And I probably hadn't watched it from beginning to end until watching it again for the podcast. So how long has it been for you since you rewatched it before rewatching it for the podcast?
Probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I may not have watched the whole thing then. I remember catching it on, like, I don't know, one of those streaming channels or something that shows stuff. I was like, oh, St. Elmo's Fire. But yeah, this is the third time watching it when I rewatched it the other day. So
gotcha. All right, well, let's jump into story origin and pre-production. So there wasn't a whole lot here. I did find some cool, like a couple of cool articles that was like talking with the director Joel Schumacher, who was also a co-writer on it. And it was kind of like his whole vision. And so he said, I lived in Georgetown during the period of Reaganomics, which is the 80s. I was looking at all these kids who are acting like adults who thought they should have 25-year plans. Every studio turned down the spec script. The head of Universal Studios actually called me into his office, threw the script down, and said, Joel, in the history of movies, you have managed to create 7 of the worst people I have ever seen on a page. He then went on and made Howard the Duck. So he wasn't the best to figure that out. But his initial concept for St. Elmo's Fire was more of a political statement, but that didn't really happen. Schumacher said in an Entertainment Weekly interview in 2010, the attitude of that time became, I'm rich, F you, and, edited down. He said all these kids were coming out of universities with 20-year plans. I felt sorry for them. I was listening to their conversations, and I thought what it must be like to be spit out of these universities thinking I better make a lot of money. Shoemaker, who never went to college, enlisted the help of a Duke University intern named Carl Kurlander to co-write the spec script on the topic. Verlander arrived with his own screenplay sparked by a bout of unrequited love for a waitress during a period when he worked as a bellhop at the St. Elmo Hotel in New York State, not the city of New York. Schumacher's sharp criticism of contemporary youth was already beginning to lose its edge as the film became more about how a group of recent Georgetown University graduates were adjusting to the new responsibilities of adulthood. The clearest connections back to his original idea are probably found in the character of Alec, who is such an empty-suited careerist that he's willing to deny his own bedrock political beliefs in the name of quote-unquote moving up. But really, most everyone ended up possessing mainly deeply unsympathetic traits. Rob Lowe later said, I think there are people who go to college because it's kind of what's accepted. I feel, unfortunately, sometimes it's used as a holding tank waiting to go into the real world instead of for education. I think there are people who can go into the marketplace right after high school and do well. So that's kind of how he, thought about the movie. So pretty interesting. I mean, what are your overall thoughts of the movie, especially now as an adult?
There's not a whole lot of movies out there that are anything like this. Like there's so many coming of age stories from like high school.
Right. Puberty and, high school, middle school, high school kind of thing.
And even quite a lot of kids, of college students too. But there's very few of the early career, fresh out of college type films. So it's like, I can't think of any right now. So it, in a way, it's very unique. But yeah, he managed to make 6 of the most unlikable characters in the history of movies. Right. And like, it's just, I was watching it this time, trying to latch on to somebody, personality wise. I'm like, I don't like any of these people. It's just,
I could see myself in a few of them, but not the full character. Like they're almost the extreme of like everybody's to an extreme. Like there's nobody that's kind of middle ground. You know what I'm saying? Like they're all like not necessarily exaggerated, but like even for example, Emilio Estevez, Kirby, like everybody's had a crush on, I think we've all had a crush on a girl. Have we, gone to the links that he went through? Borderline stalking, which he pretty much was stalking. But I could see myself in like, not as somebody outside of college, when I was in high school, maybe, or like between high school and college, there were girls that I was like, and I mean, there was, I do have a somewhat stalking story of my own. Of a girl that I really liked. And yeah, I did some things that I'm not proud of. I didn't break any laws or anything. I didn't like sneak in their house or anything, but just trying to figure out, before there was social media, like trying to figure out where they were and, find some way to kind of like casually bump into them to like, have a conversation, simple, harmless stuff like that. So, and then even with like Andrew McCarthy's character, to be in love with someone that's already in a relationship with somebody else, been there, so there's those kind of things that I can see, like there were parts of their personality that I could see myself in, but they are all kind of like I said, that extreme or the obnoxious side of that. Jules probably being the most obnoxious to me, like Demi Moore, who's probably, one of the most beautiful women in the world, in this movie is like the most annoying person on screen. So it's like, you want to see her, but you don't want her to stay on screen very long. Cause like, you're driving me crazy, lady. Just do something correct in your life for once.
I feel like out of the 6 main characters, I don't really count Wendy. She was kind of more of a side piece. I think. Yeah. I feel like the only one who was semi-normal was Ali Sheedy's character, which is kind of funny because because she plays the basket case in the other movie she was in that year. Right. So, quite
a departure.
Yeah.
For her and Judd Nelson, they kind of, really kind of went different directions. But we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into casting.
The 80s Flick Flashback Podcast will return after these messages.
Now playing on a cell phone near you. A show for all the manly men out there, where guys talk about their favorite movies and what they can teach us about being a man, featuring the coolest guests.
Murder somebody is not like killing an ant.
The most gratifying laughs.
It's Tombstone, what can I say?
And a fresh take on movies like you've never heard before.
this will be the thing that gets written on his proverbial tombstone.
We aren't here to criticize the movies you love, but to praise them for how they apply to our lives as husbands, fathers, and really all men in general. So buckle up your seatbelts, because Manly Movies is here. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast catcher. And remember, man up.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Let's jump into casting. So the producers interviewed hundreds of people for the cast, including Anthony Edwards, John Cryer, and Leah Thompson. Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, and Judd Nelson all portrayed college graduates in this film. The same year, all three actors also portrayed high school students, and John Hughes' The Breakfast Club came out the same year. St. Elmo's Fire's producer Lauren Schuler Donner has said all three were cast in the film due to strong recommendations from John Hughes. So that's good to know that John Hughes felt like they could, be in this movie as well. Mm-hmm. The strength of the movie, despite a script filled with sometimes thoroughly unlikable characters, was in its casting. Schumacher has said, "I may not be a genius director. I may not be the smartest man in the room, but I will match my cast with anyone's." And that's true. I mean, this is one of those like perfectly cast movies where every character is right for the character they're playing, I would say. And then Rob Lowe mentioned, he said, you could tell we were all really good friends and we all really cared about each other and that we were a gang. That's what we played on screen. I think it really was captured. It felt like we were all very much in the same place in all our lives, all very ambitious, all looking to the future and wondering what the future would hold. So kind of some of that real life of their young actors. A lot of them had only been in a few films, not really breakout stars necessarily yet. I think for any of them, really at that point. So yeah, I guess they could see themselves in the characters a lot of like, okay, I need to have a plan for if this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So this movie better be good. So
it's funny too that you talk about this as kind of their coming of age when they're playing these coming of age characters. And when I watched the movie, the documentary Bratz,
right,
about these guys, it's like, man, McCarthy suffered some serious depression over this, man. It's I don't know. I think a lot of them kind of took it with a grain of salt, but McCarthy really held on to it for a long time. So.
Yeah, I didn't really do a lot. I didn't dive too deep into that for the podcast. Yeah, that's kind of in that because it would turn into its own like separate thing. But yeah, definitely if you haven't watched Bratz, the documentary that's on Hulu, and I really want to read the book. And I said I didn't really want to talk about it until I've read the book, and I haven't had a chance to read the book yet because I'm sure the book probably goes in even more detail. But it is interesting that, and even doing the research, it came up a few times about the term the Brat Pack came from a writer that hung out with a couple of the guys one night while they went and partied or whatever. And what it seems like, for at least from their perspective, was he was a little jealous of them being these young hotshot actors that were getting all the ladies and getting all the attention. And so he gave the term Brat Pack as almost like as really a negative moniker. But it's funny because as a kid hearing the term Brat Pack, I never took it that way. Like I didn't think of that as a negative thing. And so it really goes to show how like it's all in how you interpret the word, whether it offends you or not. But not that is a general rule for all things, but just in this case, let me correct myself. Hear what I'm saying and not what I'm not saying. But it is that watching that documentary was very interesting to see how that article really changed their trajectory. Some by their own admission, they said that, because of that, they didn't take certain roles because they didn't want to be associated with that, where if they might have had a more, prolific career than they did. even though most of them still did pretty well. So, but
yeah.
So the cast at the beginning of the movie are listed alphabetically, and I believe it's the same way here and how I have them listed here. So we're going to start with Emilio Estevez as Kirby, the law student and waiter at the St. Elmo's bar. Of course, you know Emilio Estevez as the son of actor Martin Sheen and the older brother of Charlie Sheen. Estevez made his theatrical film debut in the drama film Tex in 1982. As one of the actors associated with the Brat Pack, as we just said, he is notable for starring in coming-of-age drama films such as The Outsiders in 1983, The Breakfast Club in 1985, as well as the cult science fiction comedy film Repo Man in 1984. He's also starred in films in various genres such as Judgment Night in 1993, Loaded Weapon 1 in 1993, Mission Impossible in 1996, Stakeout in 1987, Young Guns in 1988 and its 1990 sequel, as well as the Mighty Ducks franchise. So I'm a big fan of Emilio Estevez. I think he's a great actor. I actually kind of like him. I wish that he had more of a prolific career instead of Charlie Sheen. Not that I don't like Charlie Sheen, but they definitely approach acting from a different perspective. But I do think Estevez made it known that he really wanted to direct. And if you've watched any of the movies that he's directed, you can see why that's a big passion for his. And I think he's a decent director. I mean, he's not top notch, but he does pretty well.
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't watched any of the movies that he's directed. But I'm with you. He's my favorite of the entire Estevez family. I like Martin Sheen. I like a lot of his stuff, but
right.
I grew up on Emilio. I was watching. I think my first movie was probably The Outsiders.
Yeah,
and I remember watching that a lot growing up. Breakfast Club became a favorite. Mighty Ducks. I played those Mighty Ducks movies over and over and over again. And I never even watched hockey growing up, but I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We watched when Disney Plus came out, the Mighty Ducks movies were on there, and I watched it with my daughter, and we watched all the three of them, and she loved the first one. The second one, I think she really didn't get into the third one. But even when they had the show that came, the Disney Plus show came on, when at least the season that Emilio was on there, she watched every episode with me. So and saying we're not big hockey fans, but we just love that franchise and that story. But he was a big part of that. I think the two movies I can think of that I know that he directed, Wisdom was his first one he did, which is an 80s movie. I think it's him and Demi Moore. I'm pretty sure. Kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde, contemporary Bonnie and Clyde type of movie, which is decent. He was trying to make a name for himself and could have been a lot better, but he was trying to be a little more ambitious. And then he did one a couple of years ago. Oh man, what's the name of it? It's not The Library. The Public, I think is the name of it. And it's about, I think a politician or something that wants to get the homeless people off the streets. And so they decide to lock themselves into the big public library that he's works at. And he defies the police by not letting them come in and take the homeless people out. So it's really good, kind of like a drama, good drama movie. So check that one out if you want to see something he's directed. Those are two that stand out that I've enjoyed that he's directed. So, and he directed Men at Work too, I think, with him and Charlie. So so that's a fun comedy. I think he wrote that one too. So,
looks like he did one with his dad called The Way.
And I've seen the ads for that one. I've never watched it, but it's supposed to be I've heard good things about it. It's supposed to be really good.
So,
I
think, but I got to say this: Mighty Ducks will always be a favorite of mine, but the one or the two that I will gravitate to the most from him are Young Guns and Young Guns 2.
Oh, absolutely.
And Young Guns 2, especially just because of the John Bon Jovi soundtrack, man. It's so much fun, and the soundtrack just makes it. Blaze of Glory, dude. When that song comes on, I'm like, it just gets me fired up.
Yep, I had that soundtrack on cassette and wore it out. But it was funny because I think Laramie and I did Young Guns, the first one, a couple of seasons ago, and the first thing he said was I started watching the movie, was oh, this is the one that doesn't have the great soundtrack. It's it's the second one, but I love both Young Guns 1 and Young Guns 2. but it's one of the few movies where I think I actually like the sequel better. And I think because it's just a little bit, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a little bit more fun and more of a popcorn flick, I guess you'd say. So, but still really good. So yeah, I love both of those movies for sure.
And one that I'd never got, I know we got to move on, but one that I've never really gotten into until I never actually watched until recently, a couple of years ago, is Repo Man. And
I've yet to see that one yet. It's on my list.
It's on my list. I work in finance and I do a lot of repos. I know it's a different kind of repo. I mean, this dude's like, but yeah, I really, really like that movie. And at some point I'm going to pick it up. There's a Criterion Collection edition of it. So I'm probably going to pick that up at some point.
Yeah. That was definitely, that's high on my list to watch. It's hard to find it on a streamer. It's not one of those that you see very often. So Columbia Pictures didn't want Emilio Estevez. Instead, they wanted Rob Lowe, who all but begged Schumacher for a role in the film. Schumacher said he came in to see me 3 times. He poured his heart out, and I thought, this poor kid, no one is ever going to want it as much as he does. But ended up keeping both of them, which I thought was pretty cool. So that moves us to Mr. Rob Lowe as William Billy Hicks, the saxophonist frat boy. He made his acting debut at age 15 with ABC's short-lived sitcom A New Kind of Family. Following numerous television roles in the early 80s, he came to prominence as a teen idol, as a member, as we said, of the Brat Pack, with starring roles in The Outsiders in 83, Class in 83, The Hotel New Hampshire in 84, Oxford Blues in 84, About Last Night in 86, and Masquerade in 88. By the turn of the millennium, his career saw a resurgence when he ventured back into television, making his breakthrough as Sam Seaborn on the NBC political drama The West Wing, for which he received nominations for a Primetime Emmy and 2 Golden Globe Awards. Other TV roles include ABC drama Brothers and Sisters, NBC sitcom Parks and Recreation, which I loved him on. He's on the CBS medical drama Code Black and on the Fox drama 911 Lone Star. And of course, he's now the host of The Floor on Fox, which I'm a big fan of as well. So, Rob Lowe's just one of those guys that just doesn't go away. He just keeps going back. So, but he's good. I mean, I think he's great in this, even playing kind of the wild and crazy role that he does. But
my wife is one of those that always wants to see him on screen. But no, I remember, obviously The Outsiders was one that I grew up on. I've already mentioned that, but the one that I probably watched the most with Rob Lowe in it was probably Tommy Boy, the Chris Farley movie,
yes,
1995.
Yep.
He was a bad dude in that, but yes, such a great movie. And then the Austin Powers movies are some that I watched a lot.
Yeah. He's multi-talented. He can do the comedy, he can do the drama. I mean, he's very multifaceted. So yeah, that's why he's kind of why he keeps coming back. Because I think even when he did Tommy Boy and Austin Powers, people didn't really know of him as comedy until he did those movies, and he did really well. So it kind of brought him back to the forefront.
I liked him in Parks and Rec too.
Yes.
I love that show so much. What's funny is I was asked to be on they're starting a Parks and Rec committee in my town.
Oh, really?
It's a really small town. They don't have one. And so they asked me to be on it. And so I created a group me chat and put everybody in there. And I made the picture for the group me chat, like a picture from Parks and Rec.
Right.
It's like, everybody's like, "Oh, dude, I love the thumbnail."
Literally, I'm literally going to be on the Parks and Rec. Yeah. Chris Traeger. Yep. And fun fact, they did their own podcast. It was started with him and one of the writers, I think, where they would go through each episode and talk about like behind the scenes of the stuff. But I think Rob Lowe said he actually based his character on Tom Cruise. Like if you talk to Tom Cruise, that's how he is. He's like very serious and very like direct and so that it brings new nuance to the watching that when I rewatch, because I'll catch that reruns all the time when it's on Comedy Central or whatever, and it's always fun when he's on there. And Perkins. All right, moving on. Andrew McCarthy as Kevin, the writer for the Washington Post. He's most known as a member of the Brat Pack with roles in 80s films such as Pretty in Pink, Mannequin, and Weekend at Bernie's, which we've covered already. He's ranked number 40 on VH1's 100 Greatest Teen Stars of All Time. As a director, he's known for his work in Orange is the New Black. Schumacher knew he wanted Andrew McCarthy for Kirby's moody roommate Kevin. He said, "For me, there was no one else on the planet who had that mix of smarts, gentleness, and sarcasm," which I can see that. I mean, that's just him. Yeah, I mean, I had seen Mannequin probably so many times because it came on cable all the time. I mean, my sister would watch it over. That's one of those movies like I can't believe I haven't covered it on the podcast yet. Like, what's wrong with me? It's like I've tried the one 80s movie I've probably seen more than any other. No, I'm not, maybe not the most, but it's definitely in the top 10 or 15 of most watched 80s movies. So yeah, seeing him in this is very different. And then his character in Weekend at Bernie's is very different as well. So
yes. Yeah, and it's funny, you watch him in this, and then you watch him in Pretty in Pink, and he's like the total opposite.
Once again, very versatile.
For sure. Like he's not, it's John Cryer basically plays his character from this.
yeah, exactly. And there's the one scene when he's in the apartment and he's like before Kirby comes in, and whatever the Aretha Franklin song is, he's playing the bongos with the sunglasses on. I was like, well, okay, why are you giving me Andrew Michael Hall vibes all of a sudden? Like, this is
right.
Yeah.
For real. That's the first thing that came to my head was Andrew Michael Hall.
Yep.
And except when I watched it the other day, I thought Andrew Michael Hall, but I was like, man, I'm like really into this scene for some reason. Like, I could just see myself sitting around doing that. So, yeah.
Hey, having writer's block. He was trying to stir up some emotions, get the juices flowing. So yeah. All right, moving along, we got a lot to cover. Demi Moore as Juliana Jules Van Patten, international banker and party girl of the group. Moore began her career as a model and joined the cast of the soap opera General Hospital in 1981. After departing the show in 1983, she rose to prominence as a member of the Brat Pack with roles in films like Blame It on Rio in 1984, About Last Night in 1986. She emerged a star with her portrayal of a grieving artist in the romance film Ghost in 1990, and further box office success in A Few Good Men in 1992, one of my favorite movies, Indecent Proposal in 1993, and Disclosure in 1994. She also voiced Esmeralda in Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1996, then received a then unprecedented $12.5 million to star in Striptease in 1996. She then went on to make movies such as The Scarlet Letter in 1995, The Juror in 1996, G.I. Jane in 1997, which were not box office hits. So she took on supporting roles in movies like Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle in 2003, Bobby in 2006, Mr. Brooks in 2007, and Margin Call in 2011. And of course, she's back on the screen this past year, or in 2024, in the movie The Substance, which I've not seen yet, but I've heard is like really good and really creepy. So
yeah. I've heard that it's like one of those is like probably going to be nominated quite a bit. Yeah. I remember her in Ghost, man. Like, that was just, that she was just so beautiful for one thing. But like, I watched that movie over and over and over again.
I just watched it last year, just because I wanted to. Like, I've had it in my collection for a long time. Yeah,
I know that's just out of your reach for 80s movies.
Yeah,
too.
I think if I don't, maybe like the second half of this year, I'm just gonna do like a month of like 80s adjacent. Like, I'm gonna do stuff from like 78, 79, 90, 91. Like, it's not quite 80s, but it's just close enough that I can cover it. So yeah, so I can do like Young Guns 2, I can do Jaws, I can do Point Break, Ghost, released in the 90s, made in the 80s, more than likely. But
for sure.
So, but yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think like what I would have known her from. Probably not that much that young. I didn't really know who she was until like the 90s. Like A Few Good Men, of course, she's great in that.
Such a great movie.
Yeah, Ghost. But yeah, I mean, like I knew who she was, but I can't say that I was, I had watched many of her movies because most of her movies that came out when I was a kid were rated R, so I couldn't watch them. So
yeah, like Indecent Proposal.
Yeah, or Blame It on Rio, St. Elmo's Fire, About Last Night. But yeah. Much like her character, Demi Moore had a drug problem when she was cast in the film. One day, director Joel Schumacher actually demanded that she leave the set because she was really high. Moore had to go through rehab and promised to stay clean and sober in order to play a character with a drug problem. Moore revealed in an autobiography later that she had a cocaine problem and was using 1/8 of an ounce of the drug every 2 days. She went to treatment for 15 days and then had a counselor with her on set while shooting the film. I did remember that kind of being a thing about during the movie. Reportedly, here's a big rumor. Actresses Jodie Foster, Jennifer Beals, Tatum O'Neal, and Joan Cusack were also offered the role of Jules, but they all turned it down. I also read somewhere that it was actually Joel Schumacher who saw Demi Moore walking down the hall of like the studio offices, and he told his assistant, go find out who that is and see if she's an actress. And the story is that she was actually there meeting with John Hughes, trying to get cast in one of his movies. So once again, things you read on the internet may be true, has not been verified, but
yeah.
Then we got Judd Nelson as Alec Newberry. His acting roles include Hot Rod and Rodimus Prime in the Transformers animated movie. He was John Bender in The Breakfast Club, Alex in Cybermutt, Joe Hunt in Billionaire Boys Club, and Nick Peretti in New Jack City. I remember seeing that. He also had roles on TV shows like Empire and Suddenly Susan. It was said that Ali Sheedy actually recommended Judd Nelson, who was also shooting Breakfast Club with her at the time. The studio couldn't see him as Leslie's yuppie boyfriend Alec after being cast as the loner burnout in John Hughes' film. Nelson later said, I think I'm probably going to be criticized a lot. My character is very straight, very conservative, very career-oriented. After Breakfast Club, I think people will say I should have played another street punk. They'll criticize me for not doing what I'm good at, for trying something new. But you know what? I believed him as the conservative philanderer because that's what he is.
But fake conservative.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I liked him, and honestly, this is probably the member of the Brat Pack that I have the least amount of experience with.
True.
I think other than the Breakfast Club, like the only thing I've seen him, and obviously St. Elmo's Fire, I think the only other thing I'd seen in him, other than like bits and pieces of Airheads, I never finished Airheads. But I remember him in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a very small role, but I just remember him.
He popped up on Psych a couple of times. Like they did they had a thing about one season they wanted to have every member of the Breakfast Club do a cameo on the show.
Okay. Nice.
So I think he popped up once. But yeah, and I think of this cast, he's probably one that wasn't as prolific. Like he did do a few things, but he just didn't really have quite the career the others did for whatever reason. I didn't really dig too far into that, but yeah.
It's funny, like I'm looking at the actors, and he actually has like twice as many credits as Demi Moore, but they're all movies that you haven't heard of.
Right.
Most of them are anyway. And then Demi's like been nominated for Oscars and stuff. So it's like different. She's taking better movies. Is the thing.
And I think he became I believe I remember him being pretty reclusive too, like in the 90s, like going from the 90s to the 2000s. Because I remember when he would pop up, for like different things, he didn't. People like, this doesn't even look like Judd Nelson anymore. Like he looked completely different. So, but yeah. So then we got Ali Sheedy as Leslie, the budding architect who's reluctant to marry Alec. She made her feature film debut in Bad Boys in 1983, not the Will Smith and Martin Lawrence Bad Boys. Came to prominence as a member of the Brat Pack with roles in Oxford Blues in 84, Breakfast Club in 85, and Blue City in 86, also with Judd Nelson. She received 3 Saturn Award nominations for Best Actress for performances in War Games in 83, Fear in 1990, and Man's Best Friend in 1993. She also starred in the films Twice in a Lifetime in 85, Short Circuit in 86, Betsy's Wedding in 1990, Only the Lonely in 91 with John Candy, and Life During Wartime in 2009. And then Rumor, Brooke Shields, Meg Ryan, Jamie Lee Curtis, Melanie Griffith, Sarah Jessica Parker, Bridget Fonda, Elizabeth Shue, and Jennifer Jason Leigh were all considered for the role of Leslie.
Huh.
Believe it or not.
She's one that I've seen several movies when I was younger, but I really need to watch them again, like War Games, and she's having a baby. But I noticed this, and I had forgotten about it. But John Hughes brings her in for a cameo in Home Alone 2. She plays a ticket agent at the
That's
airport.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I love how John Hughes just uses these actors over and over and over again. It's just like loyalty type thing. It's just kind of cool.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, I was a big fan of Short Circuit. I probably watched that a million times. That's probably the only thing I really knew her from. Like, I didn't really watch, and War Games. I saw War Game, probably not as much as I saw Short Circuit, but yeah. She was good in this. I agree with that.
She was.
Then we've got Mare Winningham as Wendy, the social worker, who was also hopelessly in love with Billy. So her film and TV roles include The Thornbirds in 83, Miracle Mile in 88, Turner and Hooch in 89, The War in 94, Swing Vote in 2008, Brothers in 2009. She also appeared in American Horror Story for 4 seasons. And she's done some other TV work. Casting her as the virginal social worker proved to be a challenge since she arrived expecting her 3rd child. Schumacher was forced to clothe her in baggy Laura Ashley dresses. Yeah, they said it was like, I think Rob Lowe was the youngest of the cast at like 19, and she was the oldest, who was already married with 2 kids.
Wow.
So, but she played the part well. Like, I mean, it was believable.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd actually Turner and Hooch is probably one that I watched quite a bit when I was growing up.
I just rewatched that a couple weeks ago. I was like, around Christmas, I was like, I want to watch something kind of family friendly that's not necessarily Christmas. And it was on Disney Plus, and I was like, who can say no to Tom Hanks and a dog in a movie? I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. And I watched Swing Vote for the first time. Actually, the day of the election.
Oh wow, that was Kevin Costner, right?
Yeah, Kevin Costner.
Yeah. I think I've seen it one time, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, I thought that I had seen it, but then I watched it. I was like, dude, I don't remember anything, so I don't think I ever watched it. Like, I must have been something else that I'd watched that I thought was Swing Vote, but I do remember her in Brothers with Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I saw
she
that.
Actually had a pretty big role in that. I think she was like their mom, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's been too long since I watched it.
And then Hatfields and McCoy, she was in that. Did you watch that?
No, I watched I think I started it. I don't think I ever finished it. So, but yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was nominated for a lot of Emmys, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. All right, got a few more. We're kind of trying to, I know it's hard when I do ones with big casts because like it feels like that's the whole podcast.
Right.
So we'll run through these kind of quick. Andy McDowell is Dale Biberman, the hospital intern that Kirby is infatuated with. Her early films include Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, 1984. Her breakout role was in Sex, Lies, and Videotape in 89, which earned her an Independent Spirit Award for Best Female Lead Actress. She then starred in a series of films including Green Card in 1990, Groundhog Day in 93, 4 Weddings and a Funeral in 94, Michael in 96, Multiplicity in 96, and The Muse in 1999. So yeah, she's a fun actress. I remember her from Groundhog Day, of course, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. So
one that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's Norman Jewison film from 2001 with Andy McDowell, Dennis Quaid, Toni Collette, Greg Kinnear. It's called Dinner with Friends. If you haven't watched it,
okay,
check it out. It's really good.
I used to get her confused with Mimi Rogers. I thought they looked somewhat alike, so I'd get them confused a lot. But I'm only going to bring this person up. He's has a very small role. Martin Balsam as Wendy's father. His most notable role is juror number 1 in 12 Angry Men. He was also in Breakfast at Tiffany's in 61. He was also in the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 in 74. He had a recurring role on the TV drama Dr. Kildare in the 60s, as well as Archie Bunker's Place from 79 to 83. So I'm a big fan of 12 Angry Men. So I had to mention him, even though it's a very, very small role in the movie.
Dude, I was watching it and I was like, that guy looks familiar from something. And you said that. See, I didn't even look it up. I just I just kind of moved on, didn't think about it. And then when you said that, I was like, oh, 12 Angry Men. And then I'm looking it up and I was like, he was also in All the President's Men too.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't list them all.
Breakfast and so I'm looking. I was like, oh yeah, he was in a lot of movies that I've seen. So yeah, that's why he looks familiar. So.
But then he and Joyce Van Patten, who played Wendy's parents in the movie, were actually married in real life from 1957 to 1962. So
nice.
I didn't mention her because she didn't have a whole lot of acting credits, but I did see that little note. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And then kind of that guys or people that you would recognize for other things. Blake Clark as Wally, the bar owner or the Kirby's boss. Best known as Chet Hunter on Boy Meets World and Harry the hardware store guy on Home Improvement. He also voiced Slinky Dog in the Toy Story franchise after the passing of Jim Varney. He's also been cast in numerous Adam Sandler films, including The Waterboy, Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds, 8 Crazy Nights, 50 First Dates, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, Bedtime Stories, Grown Ups, and That's My Boy. So, I mean, as soon as I heard his voice and knew that was him, and then you see his face, and I was like, yeah, I know that guy. I didn't know his name was Blake Clark, so he's definitely that guy. And then the only other one is Anna Marie Horsford as Naomi, the prostitute that picks up men near Kevin and Kirby's apartment. I knew her from the TV show Amen from 86 to 91. She was also Dee Baxter on the WB sitcom The Wayans Brothers. She's also been in Friday and its sequel Friday After Next, as well as The Fan in 81, Presumed Innocent in 1990, Set It Off in 96. Along Came a Spider in 2001, Our Family Wedding in 2010, and A Medea Christmas in 2013. But once again, very small role, but I recognized her immediately from Amen.
Friday.
So, and Friday,
I love Friday. But you talk about Blake Clark. You said you didn't know his name was Blake Clark. He will always be Farmer Fran to me.
Yes.
Oh, good times.
All right. Anybody else from the cast that I might have missed? I don't think I did, but anybody else you want to talk about or anything?
No, you hit all the highlights, man.
Okay.
And this one guy who looks like Mitt Romney, apparently. Whip Hubley.
Oh, yeah. That sounds right. Whip. All right. Let's talk about iconic scenes. So if anybody said, or someone said St. Elmo's Fire, what's the first scene that pops into your head?
The most iconic scene that pops into my head is until this last watch, but when they're at the very end, when they're walking away all together, all the friends, I'm like, that's what I remember is just they're all together at the end, and like they just went through all this trauma, and like I don't know, that's just something that always sticks out to me. So that shot of them walking away from the bar.
Yeah. The scene when they're in the Jeep, and I think because they used that as like the screenshot for the Bratz documentary.
Yeah.
But even watching it again today, like, I don't know, I didn't look up who the cinematographer was, but I'm assuming that had to be part of the vision of Schumacher as well. But he did a really good job of framing them all, where like even in that scene in the Jeep, you see everybody's face. Like nobody's hidden in that scene. And so that's tough to do with like 7 people in a cast, 7 main people in your cast. So, but there's a couple other shots, like when they're at the bus station and Billy's leaving, like when they're all standing, like they're just positioned just right where you can see them all. And so those are the kind of scenes where like they're all seen together, ones that I think about. And then I think about Jules' apartment, all pink with the Billy Idol mural on the wall. That stands out to me for some reason. But,
yeah.
Any scenes that stand out as far as like maybe I'm kind of get away from like favorite scenes, but are there any impactful scenes or scenes that you felt didn't fit or just something that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, to me, impactful scenes, you could say favorite, you could say whatever, but just the scene towards the end, when Jules has locked herself in her apartment, and all the friends are trying to get in there, and then there's like humor thrown in there, which cracks me up. It's like, we need a hacksaw or an experienced thief is like, well, I'll go get Billy. You know,
Right.
I was kidding. Like,
right.
There's humor in there for levity, but there's like also some like hardcore drama going on with this.
Mm-hmm.
And when Rob Lowe finally gets in there, and Rob Lowe and Demi Moore are just there having this heart-to-heart conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw those two stars born in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like they made their career based off of that scene. You know what I mean? Like it was really, really good. Like, and it just kind of hit you in the feels, you know, like watching it. But
yeah.
So that one kind of sticks out. I'm trying to think. You said the Jeep scene was one, too. When Kevin gets his story published was, really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like the scene. Honestly, I was saying like another impactful scene for me, or a scene that kind of stands out, is the scene at the bar when Billy's wife comes in with the other guy, and of course he gets jealous, and he's flirting with all the women. He's like kissing Demi Moore, who's on the jukebox. Just he's being the like flirtatious guy, and then his quote unquote wife walks in with another guy, and he just goes crazy and starts fighting, and then they had this big fight out in the street, and then they kiss and make up, and it's just like, come on, dude, like this is just crazy. But yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting story arc. I'll tell you the saddest scene for me though is when Billy goes back to the university and he goes back to the sorority house, or not the sorority house, the frat house, and all the guys, this is the legend is Billy the Kid. And he's out playing football. He's like, hey, you think you can get a job here? He's like, yeah, man. We need somebody to get us some drugs. And it's like, that was when he had his epiphany. Like, you know what? It's time for me to grow up. I can't go back to who I was, Yeah. I gotta grow up. So, good scene, like good character development scene, but just a sad for that situation. Then he goes, then he goes straight from that to his wife, who says the guy who's probably the father of the baby, even if it's not really said, wants to marry her and take care of the baby, and so she's gonna leave with him. So he's like, I'm losing everything all at one time. But yeah, that's good. Gotta grow up sometime.
Another one that kind of sticks out to me is when Alec and Leslie are breaking up, and they're kind of splitting up all the stuff in the apartment.
Oh yeah.
And when they're going through the record collection, man, and like Alec is a total jerk.
Oh yes.
There's one point in the movie where I was in 100% total agreement with him. When he yelled out, he said, "No Springsteen is leaving this house."
Right.
I was like, yes, that's right. You tell her.
You can have all the Billy Joel except for the stranger.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Good scenes. Good scenes.
The 80s Flick Flashback Podcast will return after these messages.
Hey there, fellow 80s movie aficionados. Are you ready to embark on a nostalgia-filled journey to the greatest era of cinema? Then look no further than the Retro Life for You 80s Movie Podcast. Join us every week as we rewind the VHS tapes, dust off those Betamax classics, and dive headfirst into the neon-soaked, totally tubular world of the 1980s movies. From the Brat Pack to action heroes, we've got it all covered. Breakfast Club, Ghostbusters, E.T. and Indiana Jones, and more. It's like a trip in Doc Brown's time machine, but without the DeLorean. So whether you're a die-hard 80s film buff or just curious about the cinematic gems of the past, Retro Life for You is your ticket to the ultimate movie time warp. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Retro Life for You, and we can be found anywhere you listen to your podcast, as well as on our website, www.retrolife4u.com.
All right, well, let's jump into some scenes and trivia, maybe think about some other scenes as we go. The film's title, St. Elmo's Fire, is derived from a real-life meteorological phenomenon which is mentioned in the movie. It's also known as St. Elmo's Light. According to Wikipedia, it's a quote-unquote weather phenomenon in which luminous plasma is created by a coronal discharge from a sharp or pointed object in a strong electric field in the atmosphere, such as those generated by thunderstorms or created by volcanic eruption. I just thought it was because they went to St. Elmo's Bar. I didn't think that was because it was a real thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But the street that St. Elmo's Bar is on is in the Universal backlight. 2 or 3 buildings to the left is the Hill Valley Clock Tower from Back to the Future in 85.
Ah.
The magic of Hollywood.
Yeah, right.
So Emilio Estevez and Demi Moore began dating during the filming of the movie. He said he was, quote unquote, deeply in love with her. That for a time they were even engaged, though they never married. I think they were engaged when he made Wisdom, because then they came out the year after. So because I remember them being like a real couple while they were filming that. Talking about the title of St. Elmo's Fire, Columbia Pictures hated the title, going so far as to send a 35-page memo listing all the issues with the proposed title and suggesting such alternatives as The Real World and Sparks. Like,
okay.
Yeah. Terrible titles.
Yeah.
Terrible titles.
For sure.
So we talked about the song being a hit. The film's title song went to number 1 on the American Billboard Hot 100 chart on September 7th, 85, where it stayed for 2 weeks. Singer John Parr, who co-wrote and sang the title song St. Elmo's Fire for the soundtrack, explained during a speech at the Children's Choice Awards that he was not particularly thrilled to be working on the film and that the song was written in honor of Paralympian and fundraiser Rick Hansen. He said that the wheels of the man in motion referenced in the lyrics was popularly thought to mean the wheels of Demi Moore's Jeep, but actually refer to those of a wheelchair. Last little bit I have here, the film's producer, Lauren Schuler Donner, said of the movie, St. Elmo's Fire confronts the problems of what happens to friendships after a life change, such as graduating from school, marriage, divorce, or changing jobs. Unfortunately, old friendships tend to dissolve as one moves on in life. The friendships of our 7 characters are an important element in each of our lives, but now they're setting out in different directions and will form new bonds, which you kind of see at the end, where you can kind of tell they're all about to really, even though they're planning to meet for brunch, quote unquote, on Sunday, you have a feeling that they probably won't see each other as much as they did before. Even thinking about not going back into the bar because it's filled with kids and it's noisy. It's like, well, they grew up all of a sudden. So,
yeah, there was a conversation between Emilio Estevez and McCarthy's characters.
Mm-hmm.
You're staring into St. Elmo's Bar, and Emilio says, "I always thought that we'd be friends forever." And then Kevin says, "Well, forever got a lot shorter."
Yeah.
Oh, man, that is.
Yeah.
And I get it, man. I get it. I mean,
yeah,
whether high school, college, people move off and do their own thing. Like, one piece of trivia that I found out after I watched, because I actually owned the DVD.
Okay.
And I watched the like bonus features afterwards, like the interviews with it. And apparently Rob Lowe had been working on Youngblood for like 2 years before that came out.
Okay.
Before Youngblood came out. So he was working on Youngblood, but he also had to prepare for this role as well.
Okay.
So he had to learn how to play the saxophone while he was actively working on Youngblood.
Right. Learning to play hockey.
Yeah, learn to play hockey and learn to play saxophone at the same time, and shooting a movie. So I'm like, this dude is freaking working his tail off.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were at the same time like that. So yeah, but he really wanted to be in the movie, so he was willing to make that. Just like Michael J. Fox when he was filming Back to the Future at night and still filming Family Ties during the day. Like he went like 2 or 3 months with like zero sleep or like very little sleep. And was still giving his A game on both projects. So
for sure, man.
All right, well, let's jump into box office. St. Elmo's Fire was released in North American theaters on June 28th, 1985. Its only new release competition was Pale Rider with Clint Eastwood, which took the top spot. St. Elmo's Fire landed at number 4 at the box office behind Cocoon, which fell to second place in its second week, and Rambo First Blood Part 2 was at number 3. The film did end up making $37.8 million that outperformed other box office disappointments from Columbia Pictures that year, including Silverado, The Bride, and Perfect.
Man, it's a lot of great movies on at the theaters at the same time.
Yeah, summer of 85, yeah. I got a new feature for the podcast. We're going to talk about the rewatchability and nostalgia meter. So instead of going over critical consensus, I've decided to make a change. And so I have this meter that we're going to rank it from 1 to 10. You can pick any number between 1 and 10, but to kind of give you a gauge, 1 would mean I saw it once, that was enough. 5 or right in the middle would be a good rewatch every couple of years. And a 10 is highly rewatchable and full of nostalgia. So JB, where does it land on the rewatchability and nostalgia meter for you?
Rewatchability, because I see so much depth in this and what they were trying to do here. Like it's kind of one that I would like to revisit every few years. So I'm going to say it's kind of in that 5, 6, 7 range there.
Yeah.
I'll probably give it a 6 as far as rewatchability goes. So
yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. It's not highly rewatchable because it does have some heavy spots in it. It's, they're not as likable as you'd want to see. Like, yeah, it's worth watching every couple of years, especially to see like these guys in their prime. Like we talked about Rob Lowe being on the floor. I mean, he still looks great for his age. I think he's, definitely, in his 60s now, probably, or like late 50s.
So,
yeah. To see him kind of in his prime.
Gotcha.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up. Anything that you want to add about Manly Movies? Is it coming back in 2025? I know you're trying to get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, I'm wanting to come back. I've taken steps to get there. I finally bought me a new computer because my other one had kind of bitten the dust. And
you can always go back and check out his previous episodes. They're still good to go back and listen to if you want to hear him talk about some good movies like Remember the Titans, Unforgiven, Tango and Cash, one of our favorites. So definitely go check it out. Well, thanks so much, JB, for being a part of this one. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Tim Williams for 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Never trust a woman who says she isn't angry.
Pure fun. Goonies never say die, they remind. In those films we lose our mind. John Hughes and all his teen dreams, montages and synthwave themes. In Ferris hands, the city bends, living a life like it never ends.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.